Welcome to For the Love of the Game podcast with your hosts, Jefferson Belfort, and yours truly, Brian Hernandez. Brian, how are you doing today?
I am feeling great. Back to life. Last week, a little hiatus because I thought it was food poisoning at first. It was actually a stomach virus because the rest of my family got sick and it killed me and everything. It was really bad, but we're back to
Uh,
life. I'm very happy to do another pod episode. We're not going anywhere. We're here for the stay. Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm feeling amazing. I'm feeling good. Got a lot of good news outside of the podcast in my life. Not only just that, basketball's heating up. We are almost at the playoffs, 2 weeks till the playoffs start,
Mm-hmm.
which sounds crazy to even think about, but we're here. We're here and we're ready.
Oh man, it's especially too. We got college basketball going on. We're recording this on a Saturday, and then the Peacocks just won. I was in Jersey City watching the game, and the place was going crazy. Like, oh man, college basketball is also a lot of fun. But today we're here for some NBA.
Exactly. The impact that them winning these games in the tournament is going to be felt for years. And honestly, it might even change their program, honestly. So
For sure.
happy for them. A little fun fact for me. I don't know if I've ever told you, Brian, but I lived across the street from that school. So I
Really?
used to always see that growing up. So it's funny to see life comes full circle like that and
Yeah.
see what they're doing right now with their team. And, it's astonishing seeing what they're doing without a true big man on that team. I don't know if you followed
Yeah.
it closely into that level, but last night's game when they were playing Purdue, they were out. They were literally getting manhandled in the paint, but
Mm.
still found a way to win.
Insane. Yeah, I also have one of my cousins last night was telling me of like when she was in like elementary school, they had to use that school's gym all the time for like their gym class and all that stuff. So like, it's nice to have some home roots things to like do really well.
Yeah, they have a pretty strange gym to be honest,
Yeah.
but
Let's
all
get
right.
into it
So
today.
yes, yes. So the topics that we're gonna hit today are first, what's up with the Miami Heat right now, and then we're gonna get into the arms race of the how I've coined them, the Beast East, and then Kyrie and his homecoming,
Ooh,
and then
yeah.
round it up with a weekly roundup. And once again, we're bringing back one of our favorite installments, a team spotlight with a special guest, so we could go over the Dallas Mavericks. Are you
Yes.
ready, Brian?
Let's do it.
Perfect. All right. So let's land right on the top of the show with the Miami Heat. So to start it off, going into where we see Miami is sitting right now, Miami still currently is the number one seed in the East, but it's been a rough stretch for them lately. In their last 10, they're playing 500 basketball, and then they're currently on a three-game losing streak. And to be you would think this would be the icing on the cake would be the whole spat between Eric Spoelstra, Udonis
Mhm.
Haslam, and Jimmy Butler. But Miami said, hold my drink. I got something worse for you." And they gave us a very, very, very um, unfortunate fourth quarter against your New York Knicks on having the Knicks go on a 38. Say that one more time. 38 to 13 run in the fourth quarter to lose the game last night. Brian, what are you thinking about the Miami Heats currently?
Man, they I've Yeah, you can tell that this team really misses Tyler Hero. Like so far right now, Tyler Hero's missed the last couple games because of an injury, and it's just you can tell when he's not there, that offense does not look good. When like most of the offense, what I was just seeing, especially last night, was just like shooting up 3 pointers with barely any ball movement, or Jimmy Butler trying to go in the post and do something and draw a foul. Like it was just so bad. And also we got to recognize they most of that run was against the Knicks, like third unit in a sense. It was Taj Gibson. I think it was 2 second round picks and then 225, the 25th pick in the first round. Like that was the team that was destroying them. And it's pretty surprising to see the Miami Heat, especially with like they have their main five guys, but without Tyler Hero, they just kind of can't do too much. Over like we mentioned right now, so they're slacking a lot. For the season, they are the 11th best offense and the fourth best defense. But for the last 2 weeks, Miami's been actually the 20th best offense and the 17th best defense. So they've definitely taken a step back. And you mentioned earlier of like that little spat between Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler and Haslam. Like at first, when I saw it happen, I didn't really think as much. Like, all right, people get heated, happens all the time. They downplayed it, but like it kind of seems like there's a little more going on with this team, and Jimmy Butler has a history of of getting teams upset and causing drama and all that stuff. What do you think, Jeff?
Um, so I will land on the Udonis Haslam, Jimmy Butler, Eric Spoelstra
Yeah.
spat first. Is I actually first initial thinking as well. I thought this was a good thing. I thought
Yeah.
this was good to have some of that frustration released, and because you're dealing with a lot, you're seeing a lot, you're handling, you go through a lot in the season that just goes on to show, you know, it's this is what's gonna happen, right? Like this is something that's gonna happen um with uh with some organizations. But then when you see that it wasn't simply a couple days later, they did not respond after that. I thought it was going to be something that causes them to be motivated to win the next game or to prove their doubters
Mhm.
wrong, and it did not translate into that. Some think that they fell into the trap game, being that they have the Nets coming up today.
Mhm.
Um, but you know, it seems that that's not the case. Like you mentioned, Tyler Hero not being there is a big piece of that. But it begs to bring up something that we spoke about earlier in the year is that um, defensively, Miami is stout. Like they will be able to defend any team.
Mhm.
But when you need a bucket when it's down late, or you need a guy, your go getter, you know, Miami doesn't have that real defined player, and if that defined player is going to be Tyler Hero, how much could you trust that?
Yeah.
In a playoff series, and that's what makes me fearful about them. And it was something that made me fearful about them even in the beginning of the season. So right now, it's not boding well for them how this slump is going, because it's probably the most inopportune moment to have a slump, because it looks like there's people that are on their tail, trying to get that first spot.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. We'll talk, I guess, more during our next segment. But like, Miami had a pretty good lead, uh, closing out this season for this first seed, and like they've been neck and neck with Chicago for the most part for the most season, and like now they are. It's a lot closer. Like I said, we'll get into it. But what's kind of surprising is like one the Kyle Lowry that Miami has now is definitely not the Kyle Lowry of like the last couple years. You can definitely tell age is coming into the fact, and he's taking a little bit of a step back. But what I'm more surprised is is seeing someone like Bam Adebayo, like not stepping up more, like especially like last night where they struggled so hard to score in that fourth quarter. Bam, the entire game only took 7 shots, and it also, I saw something online of I went on the Heat subreddit of that when the Heat are out rebounded in a game, they are 12 and 18. So it really goes to show of like it's a little bit tough to see them get rebounds, especially with like Bam only being 6'9", and if you're going against, I can only imagine this team going against a team like Philly, who has Joel Embiid. How do they do there? And it's definitely showing like this team, like you mentioned, great defensive team, but when it comes to offense, they definitely have their struggles. And it's, I kind of called it in I believe it was like pretenders and contenders segment that we had. I said they were pretenders in the sense of just mainly because of I don't see it necessarily translating as well to the playoffs. So that should be interesting. What do you think, Jeff?
Yep. So it makes me go back on what I said to you at that time when I said that they were contenders. It makes me start to lean towards pretenders because of that as well. Um, it's tremendous to see uh, how much a situation could change in about a couple weeks. You want to remain a little hot heading into the
Yeah.
playoffs, and that's why like slumping at this time is just not a good sign when you're heading into the playoffs. No matter if you're the first seed, it just doesn't bode well for you in the playoff series heading into there a little cold.
Yeah. So I think if I think it's a pretty good transition into that next segment of that East race. And we've talked about it a little bit. And as of now, when I look at it from the East, it's extremely close. I don't think we've ever seen, especially the East being this close before. And then as well with the play-in, there's a lot of like last minute movement and a lot of teams trying to make that final push. Where I really see, tell me if you see anything different, but where I really see it's kind of two races right now in the East. So it's the race for the first seed, which consists of the Heat, the Sixers, the Bucks, and then the Celtics. The Celtics are only one game back and they're the fourth seed. And the 76ers and the Bucks are just a half game back. And then the second race is that the second bucket is for the fifth and the sixth seed to try to get out of the play-in tournament. So right now, Chicago is 4.5 games back from the first seed. And where I really see it, it's the race between Chicago, Cleveland, Brooklyn, and Toronto. Like those four, if Brooklyn makes a last minute run and some of those other teams lose, we can easily see Brooklyn make it to the fifth seed. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, the Nets would have to go on a tremendous
Yeah.
run. It isn't crazy to see, but on the loss column side of it, but honestly, I think that as much as that is compelling, and I see that. Honestly, I think the Bulls stay where they're at.
Yeah.
Maybe there will be a switch between the Raptors and Cavs. I think the Nets stay pat where they are currently. I've talked about this recently, where I think that situation that gives the Nets the least amount of friction um, is staying where they are. Ultimately, if they lose the play in against the 7th and 6th seed, they catch themselves being in a situation where they're playing potentially Miami for the first round, then the Celtics for the second round, and then making their way to the path for an Eastern Conference Finals. But if that's not the case, I think I really do think the Nets have the ability to beat a lot of the teams in the East.
Yeah.
But the one that shows me the least amount of friction is going that route, because as much as the Celtics are on fire right now, I still do think that the Nets have the firepower to beat a team like the Celtics. The Celtics was among they are still amidst this great run, this great surgeons that they're having, right? And you still saw that when the Nets went to Boston, it was a mano a mano type of
Yeah.
matchup, and they were going shot for shot at a time for against the Celtics. So you clearly could see that the Nets could compete with them, and I think in a 7-game series, star power always
Yeah.
finds its way to prevail. What team does the Nets look like in the playoffs? Does Ben Simmons make his return? That's another big question mark. Another thing is Seth Curry. I don't believe Seth Curry played or did he? He may have
Not sure.
not played in that game against the Celtics.
Mm-hmm.
But having him in there too, having Drummond, saw how they thoroughly beat the Sixers. I think the Nets should stay in the AFC. But
Do
it is a
you?
compelling set of
Yeah.
4 teams to look at.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So out of those 4 teams, which is most optimal for the Nets that you would say out of the Heat, Sixers, Bucks, and Celtics?
For first round,
Yeah, for first round.
you pray that the Heat stay there, and then my second. Honestly, actually, I'll revise that. I think if the Sixers get there, that's even better situation. It will be ruckus of a series, right? But
Yeah.
I think that's the most optimal if that's the switch. But you want to, I think the Nets have to have a little momentum before they go up against a team like the Bucks or the Celtics.
Yeah.
Have some stain, because let's be honest, it doesn't matter that you have Katie and Kyrie on your team. Anytime an AC is able to dethrone a 1 seed, there's an ultimate amount of confidence that you're carrying. It doesn't matter the names on the back of the jersey at that point. Everyone's looking at you. And not
Yeah.
only is everyone looking at you, you're looking at yourself like, we just did that. Like, we just dethroned the guys that are sitting on top.
Yeah. So when we look at it, tell me if I'm correct here, but so if the Nets wanted to stay at the 8th seed, they essentially have to lose that first play-in game, correct? Or do they?
They would
Actually, oh
have to
wait,
lose
no,
that
no.
first play
Yeah,
game.
yeah, right, yeah.
They would have to
So
lose that.
that's where do they throw? I was gonna say do they throw that game? You want to stay there? Or you want-
And that's what I wonder. I wonder if
Yeah.
would consider doing something like that, because honestly, Hornets and Hawks are good
Yeah.
teams, but I think the Nets thrash them if in a
Yeah.
1-game series situation.
Yeah, exactly. And especially staying at that 8th seed is where, or that 7th and 8th seed is where you want to stay, at least just from an S perspective of like you're saying, even though it's 1 game, anything can happen in 1 game. So you want to stay there, so at least you have 2 chances. So if you do lose 1 game, then you play the winner of the 9th and 10th seed game. So very, very interesting to see what happens. That's pretty crazy. But yeah, like you mentioned, Celtics right now, the last 10 games, they're actually 9-1. So I remember earlier in the season where Celtics were done. I remember it was my call, which I'm very incorrect about now. I was like, Celtics didn't really get that much better than last year, blah, blah, blah. I was very low on the Celtics, and now they are just a game back from the first seed. What I did find was kind of interesting was the strength of the schedules that I found pretty interesting. So we mentioned before, so right now the Bulls actually in the last 10 games are 3-7. Kind of struggling a lot. Still no Lonzo Ball looking to come back anytime soon. Actually, though, Chicago has the fifth toughest schedule remaining right now, where they have to verse Miami, the Bucks, Celtics, Timberwolves, who've been doing really well recently, the Cavs, and then the Hornets. So I can definitely see right now from where it stands, potentially the Bulls dropping back to that 7th seed or so. Just looking at where they stand off right now. Bulls are 5th, Cavs and Raptors are tied for 6th and 7th. And the Raptors and Cavs are more on the easier side of schedules. So you could definitely see a lot of movement there.
You know, since you bring that up too, well, first let's say this: it's going to be a fantastic last 2 weeks.
Yes.
That is the fact that only one team, not even clinched a playoff, but
Yeah.
clinched a division in the East is hilarious. Is why, like, you know, I think dream scenario of what I would want to have happen, and I'm speaking in the spectrum of being a Nets fan, is seeing the Raptors move as high as possible, see if they could make a run for that 5th seed. Like you said, there's a game that's separating those 3 teams right now, and then only on the loss columns, it's 4 games that's separating them from the Nets, right? So there's a world where the Nets could, go on a run and take that 5th seed as well. But I would love for the Raptors to get up to that 5 seed, because what I think ultimately is going to happen is that the Celtics find their way either into 2 or 3,
Yep.
have the Bucks slide down, and the Bucks have been playing tremendous as well too. Is what's interesting as well too is if we have a series against the Raptors and the Bucks, that's a great series. I think we could see, and this is now me speaking as an NBA fan. That would be an amazing first round series to see. What I see happening, and I see ultimately might be where we land is Sixers take 1, Heat fall down to 2, fall down to 3 in my mind. Celtics move up to 2, Bucks fall down to 4. Raptors either gets all the way up to 5. I would push back the Bulls into maybe 6. And Cavs and Bulls, I think it's going to be a
Yep.
dogfight for 6 and 7. And then we have the Nets staying pat where they are currently. I don't know. I just and the Nets have been playing tremendous lately. Is in the last 8 games, I think is I think there were 6 out of their last 8. But still, it just doesn't bode well. I don't think it bodes well for them with the remaining games that they have, that they're going to win them all. They do have a couple gimme games, but that's where I see a couple of the issues might come.
They have as of right now, pretty much the 5th easiest schedule remaining, because they verse the Knicks, the Pacers, Detroit, Houston, Atlanta, and Charlotte are probably the gimmies. And then the only tougher ones, you verse Miami again tonight, you verse the Bucks, and you verse the Cavs. Those are like the tougher games, but other than that, the rest of the schedule is kind of easy. And if some of these other teams kind of go on some losses, like that's why I added the Nets to like that next bucket, because they definitely could do something there. Is it super likely? It's more likely that they probably stand pat, but they definitely have the potential to move up, just considering how close everything is.
Yeah. And who would have thought that it would be this close? Because if you really think about it, 1 through 8 is only separated by 8.5 games. That's not a tremendous lead.
Yep.
Like we could look at what the West is, and it probably is like insane when looking at it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you want
definitely
to know? I actually got the numbers. You
all
want to
right.
know what separates the 1 through the 8, and then
Yeah.
ultimately what separates the 1 through the 10 is 24 and a half games
Jeez.
and 28 and a half games, respectively, for the 8th and 10th seed. In the East, it's 8.5 games, and in the 10th seed, it is 10 games. So it is
Jesus.
tremendously close in the East. And just to put that in perspective, the Suns and the Grizzlies
Yeah.
have a 9.5 game
Yeah.
separation from one another.
That's
So
the first and second seed. That is crazy.
exactly. So it just goes to show that this is definitely going to be a tremendous couple weeks. But also, I wanted to add, I think, and I don't know if you agree with me with this, but honestly, this is the first time since pre LeBron James, and even early on in LeBron James' career, where the East is up for grabs
Yep.
in the sense that there's ultimately anyone could take it. And I liken it back to the times when the Nets went to back finals and the Pistons stuck in a championship as well.
Mhm.
There's really, I always felt like in at least the last 3, 4 decades, there's always been tremendous player has always been on the East, and then the more dynastic teams was on the it was on the West.
Yep.
And this is in a case where ultimately, if the Nets figure it out, maybe that proves to be true as this generation of the East as well too. With Kevin Durant Kevin Durant needs to have a godlike
Yeah.
performance in this playoff for the Nets to be considered, right? So if that's the case, yeah, it gets me back into that mindset that that's what truly is what the East has become over the years. And this is the first time it's been this wide open since early in the millennium, you know?
Yeah, it's really crazy because exactly what you're saying. Generally, every single playoff race is really just, especially on the East side, it's like two, three teams that you really see contending. But as of right now, I see teams 1 through 8. Any of them wouldn't shock me if they won it all. Like you look at, we talked about the Nets are the 8 seed. They have Kevin Durant. I've always mentioned it. Got Kevin Durant on your team, always in my mind are a contender. And then you look at like someone like Toronto, who's been a lot better recently, and like you have Scotty Barnes, who's been fantastic this season. You have Pascal Siakam coming back and having a pretty good resurgence to his career. His last like 10 games, he's been fantastic, and they're doing all the right things at the right time, and it's just like we've never seen it just be this competitive. You never will see a seventh or an eighth seed be like, you know what? They win the championship. That sounds about right. I could see that. Like that's never happened before, especially like you said in the East. Never happened. Even last year with like the Knicks made it to the 4 seed. No one ever thought the Knicks would win a championship. Like no one ever thought, like no one really thought at the time the Hawks could make it that far. Like that's the 4th and 5th seed versus now it's completely different, and it's crazy how a year can kind of change all that.
Agreed. I agree.
Do you want to move on to our next topic, which is part of one of the good news that you got this week?
Oh, I'm sorry. I feel like this has to be said too as well
Okay.
before we get off of this
Yeah.
topic. Is the run that the Celtics are on is a
Yes.
large reason why I can contest. As much as I said that I think this the Sixers that take the 1 seed, there's a conversation to be had that the Celtics might very well be the ones taking it. Have you known that since January 4th, the Celtics have been on a run of 23-4 in wins to losses? And it begs the question of, is Ime Udoka actually being considered for this Coach of the Year, which I believe he should
Yeah.
very well be on the top of the conversation of,
Yep.
especially of where they were sitting at previously in the season.
I definitely agree, especially with like we said, the tough start that they had. And where I kind of see it though is just like Ime Udoka, first year coach, doing a fantastic job. But Monty Williams, there's a conversation for the man to win it last year, and he got it taken away from him. And now they came back, and they are by far and away the best regular season team this year. I think it's probably going to go to Monty, but definitely I'd say like number 2 in my mind is Ime Udoka, and then I say last, or my next person would probably be JB Bickerstaff for the Cavs. That would probably be the next one. But yeah, no, I'm happy you snuck that in. Where I will say though, I can't. The reason why at least I struggle thinking the Boston is going to make it to the first seed is just kind of goes back to like the strength of the remaining schedule of like Boston has the third toughest schedule remaining. Their only easy games are really against the Pacers and the Wizards. The rest of them are all like they verse the Grizzlies, the Heat, the Bucks, Chicago, Timberwolves, Toronto. Like none of these are really gimmies other than those two.
So the reason why I will fight back on that is the way how they've been thoroughly embarrassing some of the top talent in East and West has shown to me that doesn't matter to them right now. They are just like on a tremendous run that I just don't think that right now there's anything that could like blow them off of what they're doing right now. So it will be something to watch. Definitely as we get closer to the playoffs. Well, we're there, but once the playoffs start, it's a question to ask again and see how they fared, and we'll see, and we'll have our a real state of the union on what the Celtics are and what we think about them at that moment.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy with like the Celtics. Like even if they, let's say they don't get the first seed, it's kind of, I can't say if they're not one of the best, if they aren't the best team in the East. Like you said, after these last 10 games, it really just goes to show that they can kind of win any game and don't count them out. So very, very exciting. Next though, Kyrie Irving. This man, we got 2 good news, just one right before we started the pod. But first, we're starting off with the New York mandates for athletes playing in their home arena if they're not vaccinated. That is now done. It is removed. It is donezo. Kyrie is going to be allowed to play in the Barclays Center once again. That is fantastic. Before we even move on, actually, you know what? I'll say that next topic. 2, there was a report that Kyrie plans to sign with the Nets for, he says, for the remaining of his career, but they're going to sign an extension. He's going to sign this contract. Very exciting news. Jeff, what do you think about this beautiful news for the Nets?
What a beautiful. I mean, what a great birthday week for Kyrie Irving, turning 30. He had tremendous performances leading up to this. Got the news that it was rumored that this would be lifted on his birthday. Then he has a 43-point game, even though it was on a loss. 43-point game following that, and then went on. It actually was lifted on Thursday, and then now you have talk of him resigning. Obviously, there's going to be doubters that say there's reasons to be cautious about this just because of who Kyrie is and how Kyrie can be very fickle in his thinking at times. But truly, I think it always comes back to what Kyrie is. He's just he's one of those guys in the leagues that is like tremendously different than a lot of other players in what he wants out of himself and what he wants out of his career. And there's a lot of players where you see basketball is all they have in their lives, and that's the only thing that matters. And then there's guys that they stand for other things, and well, not that much, but there's a select few guys like
Yeah.
Kyrie Irving that know what they stand for, and they don't value themselves as just a basketball player, but this man, like, it's honestly sometimes it's ludicrous to see how much people talk about this because there's no way in hell that Kyrie plays the level of how he plays, is able to come back on the court after sitting 2 weeks, a week, drops 38, drops 43, drops 50, drops 60. Like that's someone that actually works on their craft. Like I don't want to bring up this guy, but it's a guy that is not a clean shaven brother. You know, this guy, he speaks about how much he believes and works on his craft, and basketball is the first thing on his mind. But then you can see when he's disinterested, when he doesn't want to be there, or if he doesn't care. You know, there's never been one time in my career I think I've seen Kyrie truly have a checkout moment. Like he's always been that type of player. He's just a guy that's completely passionate, and that's why a lot of this stems to me thinking that I am happy with him resigning. He's back home. Well, he's been back home for some years now, but he's where he wants to be. And why would you fight against that? Okay.
So with Kyrie, you mentioned that it's so crazy of like we talked about this a million times before, that he gets so much flack and so much hate and so much this, but we forget at the end of the day, this man's still a top 10, maybe even top 5 NBA player right now. And the fact, it doesn't matter what this guy's personality is, if you hate it, love it, whatever, if you have a chance to sign a guy like that, how could anyone ever criticize that? How can anyone do that? Especially when you're pairing him up with another, there's definitely a top 5 NBA player, maybe top 3, top number 1, the best. Like, it's absurd to hear that like some people might criticize something like this, but that it's a huge win for the Nets. It was definitely all this uncertainty before. It's all the uncertainty before of like him being able to play in home games literally gets removed at the best time possible, because we're at the playoffs now, especially in playoffs. Like without having Kyrie, that would have probably been pretty scary. But now, at least in my mind, like Nets are probably definitely one of the best contenders, especially from the East side.
Let's think about it like this as well too. Is the Nets finally got what they wanted
Yeah.
when they traded for James Harden? Is they wanted to have three um, out of this world like talents
Yep.
long term, and obviously I'm not going to equate Ben Simmons to the same as James Harden, but you have a talent that is so young and is now learning from two of the best at it. There was times where we believe that Ben Simmons had the talent to be as good as LeBron James. Tremendously, the game has changed, and a lot of the things that Ben Simmons does have is what LeBron James does have.
Mm-hmm.
He just needs to work on it. And the reason why I brought that up is because if LeBron was asked when he was at his age to start his career, how he was playing in college, I mean, in high school, translated into the NBA and started in this type of league, I think you would see something similar to like Ben Simmons with the shooting.
Yeah.
But the one thing that separates them is that LeBron just has that will, that drive that he was going to figure
Yep.
it out, and LeBron did. But now I think that now he has the right type of mentors, I would say is the best way to put it, to help him feel confident to make his game a little bit better.
Yeah.
Even if that's not what they're asking for him at this present moment. But like I said, now the fact that you have all three of them locked up long term, this is going to change the way how he thinks. This is going to change the way how he plays, and is going to hopefully change his mindset, because a lot of the frustrations, a lot of the things that they say about Ben Simmons is some of the stuff that started to rear its like ugly head after that finals run for the
Mm-hmm.
Thunder in 2011, when a little bit of Kevin Durant's personality change, and he went away from being someone that was immensely liked and became a little bit people became a little bit critical about certain parts of his game. And then you think of the whole transition to the Warriors. Think about a guy that's been more. There may not be another guy besides LeBron James has been more criticized about his decisions than Kevin Durant in the league. So from him to learn from a guy that went through that and saw through it, and went through it in a way that he's still deemed as one of, if not the best player in the league right
Mm-hmm.
now, pretty darn close to it, right?
Yeah.
Um, him learning from that was just going to only tremendously make him a lot better.
Yeah. It definitely is like I like the little steps that I'm seeing from Ben Simmons, especially like when we saw that he sat on the bench when they went to Philly, like the fact that he even wanted to do that, like, all right, maybe he's not as mentally weak and all this other stuff that people were saying before in the past. Like, all right, he got some fight in him. Now we want to see him do a little more stuff on the offense end. But at the end of the day, the reason why I've always loved this fit for Ben Simmons on the Nets is because they don't need him to do any scoring. Right now, I think I saw that like the Nets were in the last 2 weeks, the Nets are the third best offense in the league, just for the last 2 weeks, but the 24th best defense in the league. You get someone like Ben Simmons, who's always been in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. That is a gigantic win. Like, you don't need him to score. He can score. He can do amazing things in the paint. Maybe he gets a mid-range shot. Maybe he gets a jump shot or a three-pointer. Who knows? But that's just extra money on the side. Like, you don't need that. It's cherry on top. Like, it's nice, but like that's not what you need. Like, that's where all this together, like you said, long term, fantastic.
And honestly, that's not the blueprint to beating the Bucks. I don't think there's any other blueprint.
Yep.
Is we saw the Raptors put it into fruition with Kawhi, even though he's not 7 foot. They built the wall because they had a tremendous guy that could space the floor. They had a tremendous guy that was physical, and they had a dynamic defender in Kawhi, right?
Yep.
That's almost exactly what the Nets have put in place right now. They have a guy that obviously it's a little bit different because Ben Simmons is not going to space the floor.
Yeah.
He's going to be the one that's finding people that space the floor. But you put out three near 7 footers on the floor. I think that's a very, very scary sight to have on the defensive side. And Kevin Durant's no slouch on defense. And when Kyrie Irving is on, if he really wants to defend his guy, Kyrie is a tremendous defender that is actually never really talked about, right? You saw what he did to Harden just a few weeks ago, and everyone knew that it was a little personal. But the playoffs is personal, man. The playoffs is personal. Even if you've never seen this team, you don't know who's the guy on the other side of it. It becomes really personal because you're playing the best of seven, right? And you're playing for a chance at a title. So
Yeah.
I like where they are if Ben Simmons comes back.
Yeah, and like I love you touched on it there a little bit of like we all forget Ben Simmons is a fantastic passer. He's a fantastic rebounder. Like these are areas where especially well, the rebounding end they're getting a little bit better with Andre Drummond, but like struggled in the past there. Like this man, Ben Simmons fits so many holes that the Nets had in the past and then allows them to excel even more at the things that they're already great at. Whereas now the interesting part is now what's the situation with his back? Does he come back for this playoffs? In the future, long term, like we talked about, you lock down Kyrie, you lock down KD, you have Ben Simmons long term. Like this is a fantastic foundation. But let's say this year, there's still a chance this year. Is there any more recent updates on Ben Simmons' back? Do you know?
So last I heard is Steve Nash spoke, I believe it was yesterday, saying that he's feeling less pain. He was at practice yesterday, but not full contact practice. He was
Yeah.
just there with them in Miami. And not only that, there obviously was the reports that he took an epidural shot recently. So there is developments on it. But one thing I'm going to say about that whole thing is that he truly, truly doesn't have to be here this year.
Yeah.
I don't think the Nets are going to jeopardize his career to go for a run this year because after recent remarks that Kevin Durant made, where he said, ultimate goal is to win the championship this year, but it doesn't mean that if we don't achieve it now, this is over, and that was something he could not have said when James Harden was here because that was the mission. That was the objectives, especially with Harden's contract looming over them.
Yeah, I think that was the big, I guess, criticism of bringing those three guys before together was always like, but look, their timetable's only that 3 years or 4 years or whatever it is. Like if they don't win a championship within that time period, like it's complete failure. Meanwhile, now you guys got a long time. You guys got a lot of opportunities now. So definitely exciting. But like you said, this year even without him, they have a chance, but like definitely would be way easier if you had, if you had Ben Simmons coming back. Sup everyone? Real quick, adding this in here, we actually decided to cut out the weekly roundup. I had a family emergency. We had to cut it a little bit quick, but we did our weekly roundup. It's on, or not the weekly roundup. We did our team spotlight on the Dallas Mavericks. It was a lot of fun. We had Davis on. He had a lot of really great insight. You're going to love it. We don't want to have this episode too long, so that's why, again, we're taking out the weekly roundup for this week. But hey, if you guys want longer episodes or anything, let us know. But we wanted to make this one a little bit shorter just because otherwise it's going to be like a 3-hour episode. So really appreciate you guys listening. Jeff, is there anything you want to say before we sign off?
Oh, I hope you guys love the new bucket hat. Got the number 7, got the Durant bucket hat after watching, Nets thoroughly thrash the Miami Heat. I decided I wanted to make a little purchase after that, and got me a little happy about my guys. But we'll see how the season wraps up, and I am good to go, Brian, on my end.
Nice. No, loving the bucket hat. Like that's the new look. I love it. It's amazing. Again, you're gonna love this weekly our team spotlight on the Dallas Mavericks, and this was episode 25.
Peace. Welcome to the new installment of our team spotlight with the Dallas Mavericks. We got a Dallas expert, Davis Rogers, with us here today. So before we start, and I let Davis go on about all the goodness about the Mavericks this year, I just want to give a little bit of background of where they are sitting currently and go from there. So Dallas currently are sitting in the fifth seed as of today, with a 45-29 record. Obviously, Luca is taking over the league like he's done in these last 3 years. It has positioned them very well in the conversation for today to move up into that fourth seed, as they play the Utah Jazz later tonight. Davis, give us a little bit of a rundown of what you're feeling about the Dallas Mavericks this year and what you think that they're going to accomplish in this season.
Also,
Yeah,
real
yeah.
quick, yeah, give a little bit more about your background in terms of like how long have you been a Dallas Mavericks fan and all that.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Brian. Super excited to be on the pod today. Grew up in Dallas, so suburb outside of Dallas. Been a fan forever. Going back to obviously the Dirk days, the glory days when we won the title in 2011. But super stoked about the team this year. Obviously, Luka's my favorite player now. I love watching all the games, and the team this year, they've had their ups and downs, but if you look at it, primarily the downs were when Luka was hurt. So since he's been back, we, have a really, really good record. And, I think we're even higher than a four seed, in my opinion. I think realistically we could sit at that three seed. So it's going to be a really important push for us to try to make that three seed. And kind of try to overtake the Warriors. But tonight we got a huge game coming up versus the Jazz. And if we do sit at that four spot or the five spot, we have a chance to hop the Jazz and get that home court advantage tonight. So super pumped up about that. And we'll see how it goes. But
Yeah, I definitely agree with like your sentiment of Dallas being better than their record, and Jeff and I have talked about it in the past of we see Luka is a pretty slow starter because he, as amazing as he is, generally comes into the season a little bit out of shape and uses the season to get into shape. So as we see, like always a slow start, and then after that, like they start killing it and they're playing amazing. I wanted to ask. So one, Luka's been amazing, but there's also been another pretty bright spot for this team, and that's Jalen Brunson, in my opinion. Where do you see this going forward? Of like, so once we saw there were maybe talks about them trading him this deadline, but they actually decided, of course, he's worth more to keep for this playoff run. Where do you see that at least going next season?
yeah, I mean, well, I hope we keep him. I know there's some other teams out there like the Pacers and the Knicks that are going to try to get him in free agency. I think with we made a smart move at the deadline or before the deadline with moving Kristaps. I think it gives us more options with cap. Dinwiddie and Bertans both have a big salary. I think when it comes down to what they should do is move Bertans or release him and then use that money to re-sign Brunson. I think that was ended up like at the moment I didn't really understand that trade, but looking back on it, Dinwiddie's been great. I know you guys, I think Brian, I think you're a Nets fan. I know Jeff is, but I know you guys know a bit about Dinwiddie, but we really like him. So I think we keep him. We sign Brunson and pay him a good amount of money because I think he's worth it. But as a player, I think he's limited a little bit in his, ability to be a superstar just on height and stuff like that. But as far as just actual fundamentals and being able to, get buckets, he's the man. I mean, I think he could be a superstar like Dwayne Wade level if he was a little bit taller and had, some of those, more of those gifts. But
So just like a quick follow up with that. So of course Brunson's been amazing, and at first you mentioned a little bit about Porzingis and everything, and he was supposed to be Luka's number two. Do you think
right.
Brunson does have that ability to be that number two option?
I don't. I don't think he's a number two. I think he's a really strong number three. I think if you look at like a team like the Lakers when they went to the finals with like a Derek Fisher, like I think he has that ability to be just an extraordinary point guard who can go out and get you 20, 25 a night easy, but also he just ties the team together. I think there's a laundry list, a short list of players that could be a number two for the Mavs that just aren't available, unfortunately. And so I think that's the position that they're in is, who do we go out and get to be that guy for Luka? And I thought a lot of people, just based on, the days of Steve Nash and Dirk together, thought that Kristaps and Luka could be a similar duo. Kristaps, unfortunately, he just, he tries to play like a guard and he's 7'3", and he can't stay on the court, man. He gets hurt every game. So, yeah, I mean, Kristaps, good riddance.
I guess I'll add something to that too. Is you mentioned Porzingis and what he brought to the team while he was there, right? First, I'll add that Brian is actually a Knicks fan.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
So there's the connection of where I bring Porzingis into this.
Yeah.
But I think that it opens that trade ultimately in my mind is why, and I was saving this for this podcast to say this, is ultimately why I've changed my mindset on a contender in the West. And I very well see a way where the Mavs could win the championship this year. And I'm openly on that bandwagon. One of the reasons why I would say that is for years we've been hearing about the defensive inefficiencies on the Mavericks. They typically in defensive rating are around the teens or higher, and that has actually, it's kind of funny, they've swapped the offensive and the defensive ratings for you guys, but I don't think that's a problem for this team because you have a guy like Luka on your team, and a lot of those numbers in my mind, at least the rating this year, is skewed for how the season started, right? But you guys are in the sixth spot of best defensive rating this season. That speaks a lot to who I wanted to ask you a question about is a lot of what Jason Kidd is bringing to the team.
Yeah.
We've seen in every stop that he has taken that he has put defense as a big primary priority in the game plan. And what would you say are some of the key reasons you think that are some of the things that you're seeing that Jason Kidd is getting out of these guys differently than Rick Carlisle was doing in the last couple of years?
Yeah, for sure. First off, I'll say I love Jason Kidd. Obviously, member of the 2011 championship team. He's royalty in Dallas for sure. I think he's doing a great job with the team. I think just making sure that they, key in on their assignments every night. They play with effort. I think a lot of the personnel, we're kind of a good 3-and-D team. More meaning we can, knock down the three ball, but we can also defend on the perimeter. Shout out to my man Dorian Finney-Smith. He's a dog. I love that guy. But we got some good defenders, and we got some ballers. So I think one thing I'll hit on is I think we miss Hardaway Jr. a little bit. Dinwiddie stepped in and filled that role, but I think when he comes back, I think we're really going to be a team that'll be tough to stop because you have Dinwiddie, you have Luka that can get their shot, but you had Timmy back in the mix, and I think we got a real team. So
you did bring up Dinwiddie, so that leads into my next question as well too. And once again, another thing that I was thinking about is you brought up the loving Jason Kidd. All of our favorite teams, I believe, in the last 20 years, best moments came with Jason Kidd being on the team, which is pretty funny.
Yeah.
The thing that I was thinking about with this last trade, and when I initially heard about it, I was wondering, I thought that it meant Jalen Brunson is gone, right? But as we see game in game since they've made the trade, is that this three three guard situation that they have currently actually works. Do you
Yeah.
think that this is something that's sustainable, though? Do you think that this is something you could carry into next year? Do you think that's something you could carry into a long run for the rest of the season?
No, I mean, I definitely think that the NBA is more suited to have a smaller lineup these days. So I think it can work. Um, I think Dinwiddie as an on-ball defender is really good, and so I think he can defend a three, like a small forward. And so, and Luka's big enough where he's not, a traditional point guard. So you have size in that three-man guard lineup. So I think in that way it does work.
I wanted to ask with of course, right now the playoff race being so close for it seems like that 3 seed is up for grabs as of now.
Yeah.
Do you like who is your ideal first round matchup if you can get in any of these seeds?
Oh man, definitely not the Timberwolves. I'll say that. I know the Timberwolves are trying to steal that sixth spot,
Mhm.
and all the way up to the fourth spot. I mean, it's all kind of up for grabs for, or honestly, 3 through 7 in the West. So we'll see how it shakes out. Honestly, I think for the Mavs to do damage in this postseason, it's going to all come down to seeding. So I think if they're able to move up, take the 3 seed from the Warriors, it pays more dividends in the second round than it does in the first. And what I mean by that is I think that you play the Nuggets or the T-Wolves, those are going to be tough series. But I think we get through that first round, and then the 3 lines up with the 2 seed. So we don't have to see the Suns till the conference finals. I have a lot of respect for Memphis and the Grizzlies. John Morant, he's awesome. But I think the Mavs, if they get the 3 seed, they can beat the Nuggets or the T-Wolves, and then I certainly think we can beat the Grizzlies. We've already beat them 2 or 3 times this year. So, yeah, I mean, Grizzlies, good team, but Mavs, my opinion, we win that series. So, Western Conference Finals is kind of where I see this going if we get the 3 seed. If we don't, I think it'll be, kind of come down to whether we're a 4 or 5, because we're a 5 seed and you give Utah that home court advantage, that could be tough. And we've seen, the Mavs early exits in the playoffs for, the last 2, 3 seasons. I think you got to switch it up. You got to get a better matchup. You got to set yourself up for success. So, the Warriors have 3 tough games coming up. I'm not sure. I know they play the Suns, and there's a couple other games that are tough. But if Steph being out right now, it's possible we could get that 3 seed. So I'm excited about it. I'm gonna be watching the game tonight, and I think we'll get the dub tonight. Moving to the 4 seed, and then the 3 seeds up for grabs. So
I really enjoy that. I like what you mentioned of right now, Warriors missing Steph. This is like the prime time to do this. Looking at the rest of their schedule right now, the Warriors have the 10th toughest schedule in the NBA, and they verse teams like the Suns, the Grizzlies, and the Jazz before the season ends. So there's definitely some wiggle room there. I wanted to put it back to we mentioned a little bit about Porzingis, and where do you in my mind that relationship between Luka and Porzingis was supposed to be a match made in heaven. Like, what went wrong there?
I mean, I think it's just Kristaps' play style. I like being able to shoot the 3 ball at a 5 is great, and I think you see it work with like a Joel Embiid. But the difference with Joel Embiid is he plays inside out, and I think earlier in his career he played like Kristaps. He played outside in. When Doc Rivers went to the Sixers, he made Joel, hey, like you're 7-1, 7-2. You got to be in the block, and then you can bounce out. And Kristaps never got that. I don't think he's really a coachable player. I think he just does what he does, and I don't think that's how you win. And so I think that's where it went wrong, is him not really willing to change his game to better suit the team. And I thought he was an efficient player when he was like at the mid range, and like he could be a decent player in the block, but I mean, you can't just stand out on the 3-point line. Like, you can't get 6 rebounds a game. Like, that doesn't work, you know? So, and you got to stay healthy. I mean, at the end of the day, like, I'll take Dinwiddie and Bertans being out on the floor and contributing over a guy who plays, 60% of the season. Like, that, it's disruptive too. Like, when he comes back in the lineup and you got to get him, 17, 18 shots a game, and then next game he's out, like, it's disruptive. It doesn't work with the team. So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely relate to a lot of that as being a Knicks fan and having Porzingis on the team, of like him always missing. Too, like I always mention of like I always thought he was a little overrated, especially just playing in New York, because like you mentioned, he shoots a lot of threes, but he's not very efficient at it. But yet everyone
No.
sees, 7'3" guy that can shoot threes, and it's like not the best one though. Like, and we want him to be inside the post. So definitely makes a lot of sense. You talked a little bit about like Dinwiddie and how he's fitting on the team, but the other guy that's on that trade, Bertans, definitely had a big struggle years after signing that big contract with Washington. How has he been for the Mavs so far?
No, he hasn't done anything crazy, but I do think this will be kind of a really good move for his career, and that's, you know, it depends, because he could be gone after this year, right? We might ditch that contract, but I think in Washington he had to do a little bit more to get his shot, and when you're on a Luka team, you're going to get open threes, and so that's what he does best. I think as he works more into that role, I think maybe in the playoffs, first round, you start seeing him really make a contribution. Um, to this point, he's been all right. Not too impressive, but again, I like to see him out there on the floor, and I think he's a solid defender too. So
Yeah, I like it. I've always personally been like a little bit lower on the rest of the talent on the Mavericks. I know Jeff is like super high on the Mavericks right now. We've talked about it, of like when you have Luke on your team, anything can happen. He's just one of those generational type of players. But at least going forward, what is the path and the avenue to give Luka some more help and to get him some more talent on this team?
man, I wish I knew.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have a great draft situation right now. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we have the 25th pick coming up next year, and you can get lucky on a player, but like, there's certain types of player, like a superstar, that Luka's going to need. I think that's someone who's a really good defender. I think that's someone who knocks down the 3 ball and can get their own shot. I think, and there's limited players out there like that. So you got to wait for a player in free agency, and you got to hope that they're willing to come to the Mavs. Unless you draft Bronny and you can, maybe persuade LeBron to come spend his last few years on the Mavs. But other than that, it's tough. We haven't really been able to attract top free agents to Dallas, which I don't really understand. I mean, Dallas is awesome, and we're willing to pay, and you get to play with Luka. You get to be under Jay Kidd, great coach. I think we've seen that. And so, we'll see what happens, but from a free agent perspective, I don't really see a great fit next year. And, maybe and it just seems like the best players out there are getting locked up right now on big term deals. So
Yeah, it's definitely the struggle of this free agency coming up, of like there really isn't anyone available.
No.
It's so like it definitely sounds like right now the plan is just lock up Jalen Brunson, because I think he is the best name going to be available, and then other than that, like just keep
Definitely.
pushing and try to develop the young talent that you have already right now.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to add to that as well too. Is I've said this to Brian before in the past, is that I think that with the type of talent that Luka has, you don't necessarily need a superstar right now. You need secondary and tertiary type of players that can make him look better. And that's why I do like the the construction of having Jalen and Dinwiddie. Obviously, we have to see this this offseason. This postseason, if what Dinwiddie does actually translates into playoff series, and I think that's the biggest what if about you guys right now. But looping in the question I was just asked, um, what type of if there was an avenue to find a superstar, what type of superstar do you think fits with Luca because of what I was just saying? Is the level of player he is? I truly don't find like there is like one clear cut type of superstar you can play with.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few out there, and they're going to be tough to get. But I'd say a Jason Tatum. I'd say a Giannis. I mean, Giannis would fit with anyone, right? But
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I'm not high on Paul George, but a similar type player, right? Like a good defender and someone who has some length and can shoot the ball. So there's only a few players out there like that, really. So you just got to wait and see and kind of, like some teams they'll have a player who's really great who gets moved just because there's turmoil on the team, stuff like that. So I think that's where the Mavs can maybe work out a trade and get a big player. But I'd love to see a Jason Tatum or something like that.
So you did mention turmoil. So there has been times where I've spitballed and I've thought in my mind of a star that could come there, but I don't know how it would fit, but I do think that this would tremendously make the Mavs look a lot different. Is getting in on this Dame Lillard sweepstakes. Obviously, Dame is well documented about saying that he's happy with his situation. But at some point, the Trailblazers have to make a decision on what they're going to do long term, right? If let's say I can't throw together a mock trade where I see it like all the moving parts get in there, but let's say in a perfect world it does something like that happens. What
Yeah.
do you think that brings out of Luca and Dame collectively if they were able to team up at some point?
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be nasty, honestly. And I'd love that. I mean, Dame's one of my favorite players. My basketball shoes are actually Dame Lillard shoes. So big fan of Dame. Would love to see him in Dallas. In terms of working with Luca, I mean, I think it's a little bit tough to see just because they both have the ball so much. But I think you've seen on other teams that it can work. And so in that sense, I mean, I think I'd love to see it. I mean, I would love to see any superstar caliber player come play with Luca. And Kristaps just wasn't that. And so like we haven't seen him get the help that he needs in order to advance in the playoffs. And I think there's very small, amount of examples that where teams were able to overcome just having one guy. And I think one of those was the 2011 Mavs, which, Dirk was the guy, but he had really, really solid group of players on that team that were maybe a little bit past their prime, but they were all really good players. And so if you can't get someone big, you just got to get quality talent. And I think they have a bunch of really good, solid role players. I just think, you need to make a step and get someone, just see how that works. Cause, obviously things don't work out with Kristaps, but that is what it is, But I would love to see Dame, to answer your question, Jeff. He's the man.
Yeah, definitely just brainstorming like the avenue to get another star is pretty tough. Just of like the assets wise, salary cap wise. It should be interesting to see going forward. I've heard a decent amount of people that like talk about how much of Luca idolizes LeBron and all that, and he idolizes like the playing with the superstar stuff. Do you ever see of like 5 years down the line or so, if the Mavericks aren't able to put another star with Luka, like he would be a person that will like force his way out or anything like that?
I don't, but I'm an optimist. I like to
Yeah.
think that way. Man, I hope not. That would be heartbreaking for real. So I think that the Mavs will get him someone. I think it'll be in the next couple of years. I think we'll make something work. At least enough to get him. You know, I think he's going to sign a supermax, so I think we'll lock him up. But you know, you got to get him some help, and I think if that doesn't come in the next 2-3 years, then yeah, you could, because he is such a competitive guy. Like you can see it when we're not winning. Like he's the most angry guy in the court, and so in that sense, yeah, I mean, you can't really mess around with that because he's generational. Like he's going to get championships, whether it's on the Mavs or somewhere else. Someone's going to get him a player with him, and he's going to get a ring. He's going to get 2 or 3, in my opinion. But damn, I hope he doesn't leave the Mavs.
Yeah. Yeah, like sorry, Jeff, please go.
This is why I think it's great that he has Jason Kidd on as his head coach because of that. It's because Jason Kidd several times in his career had a similar situation where he didn't necessarily have a superstar or transcendent superstar, and he made it work. So who better to get advice from on how to get this done than someone like that, And
Yeah.
I think once again, I think that's why it's translating into what they look like right now in this season.
No, definitely. I think J Kidd deserves a lot of the credit. I also think the culture is really good. I mean, you see players like Dirk and Jay Terry. Shout out Jason Terry. He was always my favorite player on those teams. The Jet. But you see those players coming back and helping out with the team, and that's like you see that in college sports, but you don't really see that in NBA all too much. So I think that speaks to the culture in Dallas. Like the players that are there for the majority of their career, like love their time in Dallas, and it has everything to offer. And so you just like, if you're Cuban, you got to make the investment. You got to make something happen. Like you see other teams out there getting it done, like the Sixers and getting James Harden.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's no doubt that Luka is gonna sign his supermax and everything. It's definitely too much money to pass up. So they definitely have plenty of time or definitely a couple years to make some moves. I think we lost him.
I know. It's true. I wonder if his phone died.
Yeah. I was about to wrap it up. Do you have any more questions or anything like that?
No, that was it.
Where. So when we get him back, we can wrap it up. And
It's good.
Yeah,
It's a good conversation.
Definitely a good conversation. I enjoyed it, but yeah, that's mad funny, you froze. And
it's just like stuck on that picture.
Yeah, exactly.
We text him if his phone died.
Damn. Just wrapping up. Just wrapping up.
Love how you picked it up though. That was a pro move right there.
Hello, you've reached
Yeah, his phone died.
Yeah.
It went straight to voicemail.
Damn.
So how you want to wait till he comes back to just like go into the rap? Or
Yeah, I was planning on it of like literally just being like, thanks for having, like, really appreciate your insight here, blah blah blah, like that kind of stuff, and then kind of leave it like that. Oh,
there he is.
Hey, can y'all see me?
Yeah,
hey, there you go.
Yeah, my bad. My phone died.
No, you're all good. We're actually just about to like wrap up. Yeah, I mean we could do that now if you want, and then you're good to go charge your phone and all that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, can't remember where I left off, but overall thoughts on the team. I think we're one of the hottest teams in the league right now. Like the Mavs are hot, and the future is bright for the Mavs. Like we're getting after it, and I think good things will happen. I think we will get a superstar, and I think Luka, long-term potential is, got the potential to be a top 5 type player, and I mean like in the history of the NBA. Like I truly think that, and so I know that's saying a lot, but I have high expectations for him. I have high expectations for him staying on the Mavs, and I think it's gonna be good. They're gonna get 3, 4, 5 championships out of him. So, mic drop.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't disagree. He has 100% that potential. But no, this was a lot of fun. We really appreciate your insight on this. Hey, if the Mavs are making a run, we got to have you on again before this playoff season ends and everything. And then we're going to have you on again. This has been a lot of fun. Is there anything, you want to plug your social, your Twitter, your Instagram, or anything like that?
Shit. No, I want to get your opinion. Like what do you guys see the Mavs realistically? Before we wrap up, what do you see them doing this year? And who do you have winning it all? I know that the Knicks certainly aren't winning it, but the Nets getting Kyrie back could happen. Something could happen there, and then if I had to say myself, I'd probably say the West is going to win it. I'd say either the Suns, and if Steph comes back, I could really see the Warriors making a run at that. So, yeah.
That's. I'm going to stay consistent with my pick. My pick before the season started was Golden State and Brooklyn to make it to the finals, and then Golden State winning it all. I'm going to stay a little bit consistent there. For the Mavs, this can actually change a lot if Ben Simmons comes back for the playoffs. But as of now, I'm gonna keep it like that. But for the Mavs though, honestly, I probably see depending on like the matchups and everything, I see them probably closer to like a second round exit. That's what I'm predicting as of now. Like I definitely think, like I always say, like Luka got the potential, could beat anybody. Now, if you're versing a Memphis, that's where it gets maybe a little scary. Versing a Golden State gets scary versus a Phoenix getting scary. Those are the 3 teams I like. I'm not sure you guys can beat as of right now, but I think everyone else, you definitely have that chance.
All right. I dig it. Jeff, what you got?
So for me, just going off the Mavs first. So like I mentioned, this was the first episode I got since I put out a tweet that I had a new contender in my repertoire, and I did put the Dallas Mavericks on top of that, right? There's 3 teams realistically in my mind that could make it out of the West. It's Dallas, it's the Warriors, and it's the Suns, right? For me, I think that the Mavs ceiling is a finals appearance. And then their floor, much like Brian is saying, is a second round exit. And even that would be good compared to the fact that it's been over 10 years since you guys have made it past the first round. So, and it's kind of crazy to even think that, because just how good you guys have been over these last 10 years as well, too. As for winning it all, I've revised this a couple of times. I definitely, I'm not like Brian. My West contender was the Lakers at the beginning of the year, so that's completely demolished. But I think that I see it as of right now. If I was supposed to bet on it, I'm gonna have to go with, and this might suck to say, but I'm gonna have to go with, it's looking like it could very well be a Celtics and a Celtics and a Suns finals, where I see the Suns winning it all.
Whoa,
Wow.
you think the Celtics even beat the Bucks and all that?
I think that they have a very, very deep team that can compete with everyone.
Coming from a Nets fan, that's cold, Jeff.
Hey, we had to stay. I'm a Nets fan first, or actually, let's flip it. I'm an NBA fan first, and then a Nets fan second. So had to
There you
give
go.
what I see as of right now.
Yeah, no,
Cool.
definitely.
Well,
What Jeff said of like the Mavs making it to the finals, like, hey, with Luka there, anything could happen. I could see it. I can't like disagree. I really can't. They could do it, but it'd be tough.
Yeah.
it'll be tough. It'll be tough, you know. Being a Dallas fan, you got the Cowboys, high expectations every year. So it's kind of a breath of fresh air for the Mavs. It's like, you know, getting past the first round, like Jeff said, I mean, that's an accomplishment. That's a step forward. You lose in the first round this year, that is a bummer. It's a bummer. And so, Cowboys fan, used to disappointment. So nothing would surprise me. But hey, it's been a good year so far. Been, you know, shout out my Hogs. I got to shout out my Hogs. Elite Eight run this year. You know, things are going good. Mavs, you know, we believe in you. We believe in you here in Dallas. You know, I'm actually in Florida now, but I miss my boys back in Dallas. But to wrap up, thanks for having me on, Brian. Thanks for having me on, Jeff. Definitely got to do this again. Once we are making that run, I'll be back on. So
sounds like a plan. No, really appreciate it.